This video is going to show you how to make a chessboard, just like this. So it's pretty simple, but there's a few things that we need to know to make sure that you get these squares the same and lined up perfectly. Otherwise, if you don't know those these couple of things, then it will make it difficult to get it lined up nice. So you will start up with just a cube. I'll turn off my camera and my lamp, just turn off the view so they're out of the way. Now I want to squish this cube down. I want to keep it a perfect cube and the same size that it is, because it fits on the grid really nicely, and I'll show you in just a minute why that is. So just get your scale tool and scale it down on the Z-axis, pretty skinny. So get it really thin. Now we're going to duplicate this. So we'll do a Shift D on your keyboard, Shift D. Now we want to tell it exactly where to go so that we're not guessing on where to put it next to the other one. We want it to line up perfectly. So I want it to go along this green is the Y-axis. If yours is the X, if you want it to go along the X-axis, if yours is turned a little bit, that's fine too. You just need to know which one it is. Green is Y, red is X. So along the Y-axis, I'm going to hit Y on my keyboard, and it's going to keep it within that Y-axis. It's going to keep it right on there, so it's perfectly even with my other block or square. So now another thing we need to do is hold down Control, and that keeps it on the grid. Okay, so it snaps to grid holding down Control. So Y and then Control holding it down, and I want to go 2 grid points over, or grid lines over, and then click on it, and that lines it up perfectly with the other one and leaves a perfect space for another one right here. So I'll hit A twice to select all and once again duplicate, Shift D, and it gives me 2 more. I want to keep it within the Y-axis again, so Y on my keyboard, and hold down Control to keep it on the grid line, snap to grid. Okay, I'll hit A again to select all of them, and then Shift D, and now I'm going to come down here, so I want to hit Y first and hold down Control. I'll click there, but now I want to move it again, so I'll hit G. I'm going to move it again, and this time I want it to go along the X-axis, or the opposite one that you did before. Okay, so that's going to move along the X-axis. So click X, let's see, hold down Control and it snaps to the grid again, and click it. Select all again, and we'll just duplicate more each time. It makes it easier. So Shift D to duplicate all of those, and we want this to go along the X-axis as well, and hold down Control to snap to grid. And one more time, that's half the board right there. So select all, Shift D, X-axis, hold down Control to snap to grid, and there's all the squares that we need. Now we need to just make the opposite squares, or the board will look like it has the opposite squares. First, before doing that, let's make this a color, maybe a brown color, or you could even put a texture on it with some wood texture, a wood grain texture. It might look nice. So if I select all of it, or even just one, it's the same cube, and it will give you the same color or texture. And if I go to my materials and just click right here, and I'll choose a color, maybe a brownish color, if I can find it. Okay. Now one last thing, I'll just add a cube. Now if I kept my target in the same spot, it will add a cube there, and I can resize it. Otherwise, you just need to move it around to where it fits the board. I'll show you that in a minute. Let's scale it down to a little bit thicker than my squares, so it's so the board has some dimension to it. And then I'll scale it bigger. If I click on the Z-axis scale and hold down, if I hold down shift before I click on it, hold down shift and then click, it scales everything besides that, everything besides the Z axis. Okay, so it's getting the other two, Y and X, which is what I want. So I held down shift and clicked on it. And then it makes a perfect square. Now I want to line it up nicely on the board so that it's got a little border on it. And that looks a little, maybe a little bit too much border, but that's pretty close. So if I scale again, hold down shift. Now if I hit 7, it goes to my top view, then I can see it really well. Hold down shift and click the Z axis and just get a nice little border on there. And I'll zoom in pretty far and get it just so the color of the other squares are showing up just barely, so there's no edges or no ridges. And there's my chessboard.